Ready to get the inside scoop on equity funding? Tune into TDJ Equity Funding Insiders Podcast for an in-depth look at what it takes to access financial capital and maximize your investments. Hear from experienced professionals, including bankers, underwriters, loan officers, and industry experts as they share their unfiltered stories and valuable lessons on securing funds.
Welcome to the TDJ Equity Funding Insiders Podcast, where the secrets to funding your real estate dreams are unveiled. I am your host, co-host Jacqueline Jackson, and join me as a man whose expertise in the industry is as vast as the properties he's financed, the one and only Arnold Podrebarac. Right? If you would, Arnold, right now, if you would just say your name for it, because I want to make sure everybody have your name right.
Yes, Arnold Podrebarac.
Podrebarac. All right. Thank you, Arnold. I call him Arnold. All right. Mr. Arnold, he brings a whopping 22 years of real estate wisdom to the table. Arnold is just not like a real estate veteran, you all. He has been in this great business of guiding the navigation world of the private lending area. He's worked a little bit, he's worked in the private, as we say, the hard money area, but he's also been working really great in the private lending area, which we're going to talk more about that today. But either way, he brings us years of experience in this field. So we are really blessed to have him here on our show today. So let's get ready for unfiltered insights, juicy stories, and particular tips as Arnold spills the beans on how to secure funding for your real estate deals. So if you would, let's welcome Arnold to our show today. Welcome, Arnold.
Thank you, Jackie. Look forward to spending a little time with you.
Okay, well, like I say, great. So this is what we want to start off today. If you would, let's give our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little background, and what all you do.
Right. So I'm currently a private lender. Work for a company based on the West Coast that does private lending. We do real estate funding for non-owner occupied investment properties. In the case of this company, we do 1 to 10 units. So it's always just non-owner occupied investment properties.
Okay. And for our beginning listeners, let's talk about it. Those that are interested or getting into real estate, those that are already real estate. As a loan broker, we work with several different lenders that actually direct lenders that help us with our clients. Arnold is one of those that we consider like a go-to, because I call him about some things just to ask questions because he knows. So he has great stuff to bring us today. So what we want to do starting out for our new ones is explain to them what is the 1 to 10 units when you say that? Explain that to them what that is compared to other stuff that they're doing in real estate.
Correct, yeah. So you have single family residence is the 1, duplex 2, triplex 3, quad or fourplex is 4, and then anything 5 to 10 units in our case, but anything 5 plus units is a multifamily. Okay. Multifamily is a little bit different loan. It's a different animal and requires more experience from a lender standpoint and from a borrower standpoint as well. So it's not for the faint of heart. To do a multifamily, you do need the experience, but a good way to get it is to buy 1 to 4 units as your start for investment.
Right. So you're saying basically they should start with the 1 of 4. Now, when you say start, let's say it's a little different than what we had talked about before as far as what we're going to say in the beginning, because you say some things that I think we need to bring to our audience. When you say 1 to 4 units, they need to start. Or you say like if somebody's starting out and with direct lender, what do you want to see as a first time starter? Because you all do first time. Am I correct? Do y'all do first time?
Correct.
Right. So can you explain what they need to have when they come to you? What are you looking for? They need to know that.
Yeah, great question, Jackie. It's important because a lot of people look at it like they're buying, let's say, a $200,000 house. They look at it as if they're buying an owner-occupied house. Well, we've got 20% down, so we should have enough money. It's different on an investment property. So you can buy an investment property that's already been remodeled and you're buying it to buy it as a rental. That's different than buying a property that you're going to remodel and then either bring it to investment or flip the property. So a first-time investor needs to really look at it like they need to have conservatively 35% of the purchase price, 30 to 35% of the purchase price liquid. Liquid cash is cash in the bank that you can use for it, unless you're going to liquidate a HELOC or something like that, but we can get into that more later. So really it just comes down to cash, and it comes down to credit. In today's lending world, credit is super important, and you really need to have 700 plus FICO.
700 plus, right, to kind of get that started. Okay.
Right, especially a first-time investor, correct.
Right. And notice now that you all, my listeners, what he's saying is this: as loan brokers, we deal with all types that come through. But he's saying if you're a first-time investor, he's not saying we can't, because we take like 620, 640. I think you do some 680. He's not saying we won't take it. So make sure y'all understand that. What he's saying is if you're a first-time investor, it's best you need to have a 700 credit score. If you're starting out for the first time and you want to use private lending money, am I correct? Then that's something he has to look at and be prepared to actually come where you're putting that 30 or 35% down out of your pocket. Because people are like, well, how much you got to put down? And I tell them, it's always the best way to look at it is how much you got in the bank, is how much you can afford. So if you got $100,000 house you're looking at and you have $30,000 in the bank at 30%, you probably could do that, which we know we have a minimum of 100,000. But I'm just showing that's your budget based on what's in that bank. So you don't need to go look at a $300,000 house and all you got is $30,000 in the bank. Am I correct?
Correct, right. And the breakdown really is, for the most part, you figure even investment property, even first time, you're going to put about 20% down on that property. The remaining 10 to 15% liquidity is to cover closing cost fees, property tax, insurance, title, escrow. Right. And then also you need a reserve requirement. And if you're going to rehab, you need to have at least 15 to 20% of the rehab budget liquid as well to start the rehab. So it kind of breaks down like that a little more. Right,
which is really good. So let's go to that budget that you mentioned. I think, again, for us to understand, when you said you need to have this much for your budget, what's the reason they need to have that to get started, 15% or whatever for their budget? Why would they need that?
Right. So if you're doing a rehab project, and let's say conservatively your rehab budget is $30,000. So the reason you need the 15% of that liquid is rehab budgets, although it is a loan, you're only paying when the money is drawn. But you are starting the work in order to take a draw.
Okay.
So you have a rehab budget with line items. You complete X amount of work. You request a draw on that, and then you get the draw. So it's more detailed, and when somebody does a loan, we'll get into it a little more, but that's the basics of it.
A basic so they can understand. So we want y'all to, and if I'm correct, I know you guys do 100% rehab though, for its reimbursement, right? On the rehab.
Correct.
But it's a percentage, like for most lenders, you have to have a percentage that you have to put into purchasing the property. Okay, so you'll come with, like he said, that 30% or 35%, you'll have that, or 20% as you get more experience on your thing. And I do want us to talk about what you consider experience, because we're getting a misunderstanding of what real estate investing experience is. Okay, but what I'm going back to what I was saying, you ought to make sure that on that 15 to 20% that you're going to put down, that's what he's saying you need to have set up to be part of your budget when you're putting things together. Now, we're going to go back to the other one I want, but let's talk also right quick before we get off of the reserve. What do you mean when you say they need to have so much reserve? What is a reserve for?
Correct. So it's not money that you're going to apply at escrow, or you're not going to apply the money at escrow to the closing the transaction. The reserve requirement is you need to have 3 to 6 months of principal, interest, tax, and insurance liquid. So those numbers multiplied times 3 or 6. In the case of say a fix and flip loan, a bridge loan, it's interest only. So interest, tax, and insurance.
Okay, and that just didn't be in a like account that you all can see that they have those reserves, right? When you say reserves, correct, you need to see, Jackie, send me the bank account with the money in it, basically. right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Because people need to understand the difference of that. Again, this one is kind of focused on maybe our beginners, because we do have a lot of beginners that's watching our show now. And so we want them to kind of have some actual information that's correct coming from a lender directly. They can know how they need to have that. Now let's go back and talk about experience, because we need to really, I know we have a lot of situations that come into us that we haven't explained this. So I want people to hear it from you as a direct lender. What do you consider as real estate investors experience?
Okay, so it's changed over time as well. In the current market, you have to have, for instance, on a fix and flip loan, or a loan that you're going to do rehab on, you need to have experience doing those. If you don't have experience, we'll still do the loan. It just affects the loan to value as well as the rate. So experience makes a big difference. The more experience, the better loan to value and the better rate. Right. So that's really a big thing. It doesn't mean you can't get into it and you can't build up experience, because that's really what we encourage. But you learn from experience. That's why you get a better rate and a better loan to value. We know that by taking that risk and making that investment, you learn from experience, and we reward that.
Right, with a nice, well, as we say, your terms are a lot better for you compared to if you knew. So correct. What I want to add to you as well with that experience too is that experience is not that you invested into a real estate investment project. You put money into that project and now you have experience. No, experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, experience is when you have actually had your name on the LLC of this property we're talking about, or you part of the settlement. You know, that you part of the settlement. So that's, you're on the loan. Is that basically what it is? Or how do you all word it? You know, so they can know.
Yeah, you're on the title.
Okay. So they need
you're on the title either through an entity or as an individual.
It's for an individual. So that means paperwork, state paperwork, legal paperwork, guys, not somebody saying, hey, come with me and invest in this property. You're going to put $80,000. I'm going to give you a return on your money of 22% or 33%. That's not the same. You just invested your money for ROI. That's all, which is return of your money. And that's fine. Your return on your investment is all you're going to get out of that. But you can't come to me as a broker or him as a lender and say, well, I have experience because I've invested my money in this, this, and this. Okay? Am I correct? Is that it?
Right. Works? It's a great point to bring up, too, because it does come up quite often where somebody will have experience in the sense of that they were investing like you had said. But no, you have to have your name on title.
Right. For that to count. For that
to count.
Okay, which is so everybody can know that. Now, I do know, like you said, they need to have that on title, but when we do with purchasing or fixing flips, now, not necessarily for our new people as much, our listeners, but let's talk on this new construction, because people have a misunderstanding. Well, the first thing I want to start, my first thing is I want to build my house. I want to do new construction. So I know me and you done laughed about this a lot of times with the stuff we have come our way, but I want you to talk about new construction as a lender. What are you looking for? What they need to look like and what they need to do or don't do when it comes to new construction?
Right. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Experience really comes into play for new construction. It is, we require you have at least, if you're doing a ground up construction, we require you have at least 4 ground ups under your belt in the last 3 years before we'll lend on a new construction. There's an exception for contractors building their own investment property, new construction. So contractors have a little bit of an out. If they've done new construction for other people ground up, then we can count that towards experience.
Right.
And on under their own.
And see, and experience with that, when we do that too as well, a lot of the lenders, you're right, they'll take that as experience from the contractors. But I would tell you, they do give us a lot, because I've had it happen before. They did give us a little credit, but for what he did, but it was best. They would like to see the one that I had, the contractor that had actually did it in his name or his company name. They gave him more of a deal. So understand, you need to have experience under your belt. And if you don't have it, my suggestion is this, and I think I had that conversation with you, where if you're not, how do you get experience? Because if you don't have experience, you can't get along. Well, get with someone, maybe your first deal, that they have experience and you all kind of could get on that together, right? Because we talked about that. So how would you get, I want you to really mention that to our listeners of what they should look at doing to get on that if they don't have any experience. How do they get experience with new construction?
Right. So you would find somebody that has the experience, somebody you obviously trust, because you're going to have to enter into an agreement with that person. That agreement could be an entity, an LLC, something like that. And you're bringing the money to the deal. That's your contribution to the deal. If you're on an entity with those people, in an ideal world, you want to have a majority or at least 25+% of the entity. You're on title with that entity, and you have a major ownership in that entity or major membership in that entity.
Now, let me say this, not to necessarily break you off, but
no problem.
When you say 25% to have interest in it, so if a person come to you and they got 5% interest in the company that has built that, would that be considered their part of their not reference, but their experience, even though they had 5% on the company that fixed and flipped the house?
Not really. They really need a higher percentage of the entity. And the reason being, risk is percentage. So if your risk is 5% of a deal, let's say a $200,000 deal, and your risk is $10,000, we're looking for you've taken the risk and succeeded at that risk.
Right.
That's really what we're looking for. And now, you could have done a fix and flip and lost $5,000, but it was in your name and it still counts.
Right, right. For the percentage is 100% was in your name. So you're saying that would matter more than you being 10% of somebody else's stuff is basically.
Right, exactly.
Right. And that's the myth. And I'm going over stuff because that's the myth we have when people come in. They don't understand how that is. And they have partnerships they'll get into, but it's not the proper way. It was not that it was wrong or illegal, because it's not. It's just it wasn't the proper way that we would consider it as experience. So I wanted us to, with you being on, to really address how they need to look when they actually come to a lender, even as a new one. A big thing is on a construction deal. I do want to emphasize that again, that you need to have experience with new construction in order to get new construction money. That's from a lender. Now, you can go borrow it and get it for all your family and everybody you want all day long. Yeah. But when it comes to lenders, that's what they're looking for, is they're looking for that type of experience. So I definitely wanted us to go over that. And then also, which I'm glad, thank you so much for helping to do that. Let's talk about the different types of loans. And I guess what we call them, or you all call them, is DSCR. So explain what those are and those different types of loans for people.
Right. So up to this point, we've basically covered what's called a bridge loan, or a bridge with rehab, or value add loan. They all fall under the same category, whether it's a stable asset and you're just simply doing a bridge or whatever. They're all basically the same loan. DSCR loan is debt service coverage ratio. And this usually involves either buying a property that is already completed and ready to rent out, or refinancing a property that you bought, rehabbed, and now you're ready to rent it out and move it into a DSCR loan. So the debt service coverage ratio loan it's like all of them, it's not a full doc loan. It's basically the same documentation. We need to see 2 months of most recent bank statements is the deepest we dive into your income. It's your ability to complete that loan as a purchase or as a refinance. So debt service coverage is either cash out or not cash out. And if you're refinancing property under a debt service coverage ratio loan, DSCR loan, then the whole point is this: if you have a property that the market rent is $2,000 a month, and your principal, interest, tax, and insurance combined, and you could add to that HOA or management fee combined, is $2,000 or less, then that property covers the debt service on that. And then that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a property that covers the debt service on the loan.
And basically, in short, you're saying your rent need to be more than your mortgage on your rental property.
Or at least as much
As much
as.
Right.
Yeah, I mean there are exceptions, and we do some different loans too, but I don't want to get into that yet.
Right.
But we'll go lower, but it's just you have to.
Yeah, because and what you're saying is everything is not cookie cutter. Majority of it is, I think, in lending and stuff. You let me know, majority it is, but sometimes you have custom situations, and that's where you guys have to do custom stuff, and of course on our end as well too. So basically, that's what that are. So that's what that is. At TDJ Equity Funding, we understand the challenges you face. Whether you're expanding your business, investing in real estate, or launching a startup, we've got your back. Our expert team of loan brokers is dedicated to helping you secure the funding you need, hassle-free. Imagine a future where your business thrives, where opportunities are endless and working capital has made a great difference in your business. TDJ Equity Funding can make it happen. Booking an appointment with us is easy as pie. Just visit our website at www.tdjequityllc.net and take the first step towards your financial success. Don't let your dreams gather dust on the shelf. Seize the opportunity today. Visit www.tdjequityllc.net and schedule your appointment with TDJ Equity Funding. Let's turn your dreams into dollars. We definitely and appreciate you telling us that and explaining. I do want to emphasize again, based on what you're saying, if you are a first-time landlord by force, understand that house is now set up, whether you because you're not in it anymore, that it is set up as a rental property. So when you refinance it, you have to refinance it as a commercial property. Am I correct? You can't go and do it as, or somebody like I've had try to get a HELOC out of a rental property and you can't. So let's explain the difference between that, if you would, when you guys deal with refinancing, what you looking for compared to, the other way, which is owner occupied.
Right. So it's okay. So we need the lease for the property. We're just looking for longevity of lease, meaning if it shows up as that it's your property, and there's definitely ways to find out, as opposed to an actual rental property, then if it's your property, it's not valid. We only do non-owner occupied. So on the DSCR loan, we could get into all the documentation, but that's premature. But it's basically what separates it is the lease, and then we oftentimes look for proof that the deposit and the rent was made into your checking account. So it's a warning for most people. A lot of people have tenants that pay cash. If you're not depositing that cash into the bank and you have a lease, it doesn't mean that counts.
Right.
So that is an issue.
Right. That makes sense. And that's what I was trying to emphasize, because a lot of people think that now that I've, moved out, I'm not going to say anything to them. I can still work it as if I'm there. But when you get ready to file a claim or refinance and all of that stuff comes into play. You're no longer, that's a commercial property. So we say that to you all, to landlords like that, to be aware of that and then get yourself set up where you can get funding on your investment or refinance your investment. So we want to do that. So before we get off today, I have a few questions that my listeners have asked that I ask you. And one of them would be, Arnold, what would be your top funding tips for our listeners?
The best tip I can give people is, we had touched on it earlier, is liquidity. You think that you're going to need far less money to do a project, but always think you're going to need more. So liquidity comes in a number of ways. A lot of people, it's obviously the cash on hand, cash in the bank, checking, savings account. People have retirement accounts, people have HELOCs, but you have to liquidate those in order for those to count towards liquidity now. So you may feel you have the reserve in a retirement account, but a retirement account is only as good as the liquidity in the bank. So just plan for high liquidity. That's a big one. And then the other is credit. if you're planning on doing this now or in the future, start monitoring your credit. Do the steps that it takes to improve your credit. Believe that you need to have 700 plus credit. Even though we may go down to 660
Right.
or 680,
Right.
just work towards 700 plus. It's a different lending world now, and you need to really, those are the two most important things you could do. And having an entity is a plus, and many states require that you have an entity to invest in those states. So it's a protection for you as well to have an entity.
Right.
But I'm not an attorney or an accountant, so I'll leave that to them to work
explain
with
to you, right,
Yeah,
what you do.
yeah.
Exactly. So you are correct in that. So what would be, I mean, I know you say work on the credit because I want to call our actions for our listeners. And I know you had
Of course.
mentioned you would like for them to actually work on their credit is basically what you're saying. And then also let's talk about the process of how they go about the market as far as picking houses and stuff, because you mentioned that before to me earlier. So if you would, can you tell us a little bit the call of action that's dealing with them picking their houses and for the market and stuff?
Sure. Multiple ways to do it, and I've dealt with a lot of different scenarios. People that join clubs or groups where the houses are identified for them. Oftentimes there's a premium that you're paying on the property. The MLS and Zillow is obviously people's most used choice to find a property. Off-market properties are probably one of the better ones, but you would do that later in your investment process, because if you're going to do mailers or target neighborhoods or something like that, it involves an investment up front. So picking a property is something where you only can use, you best trust your own advice, meaning you're going to buy a property and you're looking at that property, let's say on Zillow as an example, and you see the property and it needs work, and you think, well, if I buy this property and I put work into it, then I can sell it for much more than I bought it for. You have to, one, understand how much work that requires. You know, it's a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Does it require $30,000 in work?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I put $30,000 into a $200,000 house, then you go online and you see gutted, remodeled 1,200 square foot houses in that neighborhood. What are they selling for? Well, if it's selling for $250,000, gutted and remodeled and similar, then you're really not making a good investment decision. So a lot of these things you figure out too late when you're inexperienced, meaning you buy it, you get all excited about it, you've got a rehab budget, you know, contractors made out his budget for you, and you present it, and you're trying to get a loan for $160,000 on a $200,000 purchase and $30,000 for the rehab, so a combined total of $190,000 loan. You get your appraisal. The appraisal shows the as-is value as well as the after repair value, ARV. And the ARV comes back, and your loan to cost, and your loan to ARV isn't good. So we're not going to lend you the 80 cents on the dollar on a loan that doesn't make sense, but you're already committed to that property. So you need to really do your due diligence up front. So find people you trust if you don't have the knowledge base for that.
Exactly. And on that note, I want to say, because I would definitely want them to mention, because I know what type of lenders you guys are, is that when it comes to a lender, our last question is, what do they need to look for in a lender? Or because you're a direct lender, so what do you think they need to look for when they're looking for a direct lender to help them?
So you need to look for people that have the experience. So for instance, Jackie, if they would call you and they say, we're looking at this property, here's what we want to do, here's what we're going to spend, you have the knowledge base to tell them that is or it isn't a good investment. You have a broad knowledge, you've done it enough. And the same when they call me directly. I can pull up data that possibly they can't pull up, and it either does or doesn't make a good decision.
Right.
You know, the old adage, you don't want to buy the biggest, most expensive house in the neighborhood, because it's always dragged down by the lower priced homes. So the same applies here. We don't like to see an ARV at 2 times what the neighborhood average value is. So it may be the Taj Mahal in a neighborhood that's not great, but it's not going to have the value.
Exactly. So like I say, it's about the return on your investment, and that's what the lenders do. They want to make sure the numbers work. That's what we call. If the numbers work, then we can do the deal. But if the numbers don't work, you can't do the deal. So in order to know that, you're right, you have to deal with a lending power that does have experience and that understands that. So I totally agree with you on that. So we wrapping everything up. We want to definitely, your answers have been really awesome, and definitely you've given us a lot of information for our listeners, and we thank you and appreciate you for coming to our show today. Mr. Arnold, is there any last things you would like to say to our listeners?
The best choice that people can make is to look at investments like you would look at investment in property like you'd look at investment in anything else. Many people invest in stocks or 401ks or whatever. But if you look at this the same way, meaning with an intelligent approach, then you're going to have a higher likelihood to succeed. I always say it's better to buy 5 $200,000 houses than $1 million house, because you're putting eggs in different baskets there. So probably the best advice is start slow and start lower, even if you could afford more.
Right. I got you. That's great advice. And thank you again. Thank you again so much for being on our show, Mr. Arnold.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you again.
Take care.
You take care as well. And to our listeners, if you like this information and would like to learn more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com at TDJ Equity Funders Insiders. Until next time, thank you and take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of TDJ Equity Funding Insiders Podcast. If you'd like to be a guest or get in touch with us, please visit our website at tdjequityllc.net/podcast or email us at podcast@tdjequityfundinginsiders.net. Until next time, take care.